What's up, y'all? Proof of Workforce, Dom Bay here. It's Wednesday, and the big question is, will Texas be the first state in the United States to cross the Bitcoin SBR finish line first? Really action-packed hearing just the other day, and we're going to go straight to that and take a look at some of the big commentary that was made as far as the Bitcoin strategic reserve that is on the table there.
Individuals and investment firms have reacted to excessive spending at the sovereign level by seeking alternatives to fiat currency. These alternatives have historically included gold and land, but now include, to many, cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin, referenced as digital gold by the United States Treasury, has become a recognized asset in the financial markets. Besides individuals holding Bitcoin directly or through custodianship on exchanges, multiple publicly listed SEC-regulated Bitcoin ETFs are now traded on U.S. stock exchanges. Bitcoin offers unique advantages in the digital era due to its limited supply and decentralized nature.
All right, so y'all heard it there. Bitcoin referred to as digital gold by the United States Treasury. That is the state of Texas. That is the second largest state, both by population and by area, and the eighth largest GDP in the world. Talking about Bitcoin potentially on the balance sheet. Huge event the other day. The fact that it happened, a ton of people put a lot of work behind the scenes to make it happen, and a ton of takeaways. We have another clip that I felt was really beneficial into understanding how an institutional fund thinks. When you think of pension funds, municipalities, state treasuries, how do these funds look at investing? For the individual, we have our own risk appetite. And for those on the sidelines of Bitcoin, they see it as a very risky investment. For those that have learned and studied Bitcoin, we see it as a very risk-free investment. But here's a great clip as to what the view is on institutions holding Bitcoin and what some of their thought process is. So check this out. And I'm going to share this with you right here.
We have looked at crypto in our current portfolio, but as I said, we wanted to have some of the regulatory certainty, some of those issues off the plate. While we may not take advantage of the rise, but we are a different investor. You know, we're a different investor because it's taxpayer dollars. And so we may not be looking for the most maximum gain of alpha that we can get out there and the highest return. That's not our role. And so therefore, my point is, we kind of typically take one step at a time and lean into, we may miss the front end, but we're more defensive on the back
Understood.
end.
And your role in
So what are the takeaways from that clip? And here's my biggest takeaway. The institutional investor is not the same as an individual investor, meaning that they don't care about missing a huge run up in an early asset that we may see and they may see. It's big, large ship moving slow and steady, not looking to capsize. And so what the takeaway is from this is we are incredibly early in the institutional cycle. However, in the same hearing, the United States Treasury is mentioned as referring to Bitcoin as digital gold. So we have two cycles that are converging on each other with the potential to go many different directions. We have a nation state cycle that wasn't anticipated, where the United States is looking at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's heavily on the radar with a possible strategic reserve. We also have states, pension funds, municipalities looking at Bitcoin in a cycle of their own. And that happened just last January, where the Bitcoin ETFs were initiated and approved, offering institutions a vehicle that didn't include holding Bitcoin directly on the balance sheet. So huge undertaking there. Some other things going on that I want to share with you guys briefly here. If I can pull up my screen. Interesting. I looked at an old filing from one of the first institutional funds, the Houston Firefighters Relief and Retirement Fund, also known as the Houston Pension Fund. And found something super interesting. They, of course, are a pioneer. Houston was the first pension to put Bitcoin directly on the balance sheet. And I'm going to show you guys a quick report from 2024 from them. And as you can see on the report, with a fair value measurement of some of the assets, they have digital assets directly on the balance sheet with 24 million of Bitcoin directly on the balance sheet. Now, that fund may have moved to the Bitcoin ETF and holding their Bitcoin. But again, they started off by holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet prior to Bitcoin ETFs ever being approved. So pretty cool to see on a pension fund balance sheet, Bitcoin directly listed as an asset that is being held by that fund. And again, the Houston Firefighters Pension Fund is a very healthy, well-run fund. So kudos to Proof of Workforce board member Ajit Singh, the CIO of the Houston Pension Fund, and one of the first to do it there. Some other stuff we're seeing. I am noticing right now a battle of Bitcoin narratives. And what I mean by that is it seems that on these little dips and runs in Bitcoin's volatility, you still have some narrative differences between Wall Street and how they're trying to steer retail. And let me show you a couple of those and what we're talking about with that. You can see, I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to go to, let's see some of these beautiful headlines right here. Here's one. Uh, Fraud case from the Economic Times. ED attaches commercial assets in Dubai in Bitcoin investments fraud case. So here we have the state of Texas discussing Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and we still have some mainstream media outlets that choose to focus on some crime that took place with Bitcoin involved, amongst all the things happening in the space. Another potential story that we have is, let's see, here's one. I won't stop until I have my 620 million pounds of Bitcoin back. BBC focusing on someone who lost their seed phrase and is trying to find their Bitcoin. He mistakenly threw out the hard drive. So again, Texas is adding potentially Bitcoin to the balance sheet, yet the BBC is running a story on how someone lost their Bitcoin, things that instill fear on everyday retail. We got a couple other stories here. Here's a great one. Barron's, Bitcoin falls. Why the crypto's Trump trade is fizzling out. Um, again, meanwhile, Texas is discussing Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And then another one we have here, Forbes running a story. Serious Bitcoin price suppression warning adds to death cross crash fear. So there's another one. And meanwhile, as all of this is taking place, what we have is, I'm going to share my screen here again. And I don't think I have this graphic, but we'll get production to pull it up. So the graphic, this is what's being shared. I'm going to stop sharing this. And you'll see in front of you $1.4 billion. Actually, I think I can share this screen. Hold on one second. Let's see. No, that's not going to work. It's on my notes. And y'all, we don't share notes because that's how disasters happen. $1.4 billion on Thursday, according to data compiled of inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, the highest volume since they entered the market. The largest chunk of that is BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, which had 1.1 billion in inflows alone on Thursday. What's the takeaway? Some very mild price dip. You're seeing fear, uncertainty, doubt, FUD, all this kind of things popping up on the mainstream media. And meanwhile, institutional smart money is buying the dip with record inflows. So what's the takeaway on that? Don't buy into the mainstream media fear coverage when it's dip time. and just focus on the metrics of what's really going on, like the state of Texas potentially adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet, the second largest state in the United States and the eighth largest economy by GDP in the world. Big, huge development. In the world of proof of workforce, we mentioned on our rank and file podcast the other day that we do have confirmation that potentially the second law enforcement association, following the breaking news last week of the Wyoming Highway Patrol Association being the first law enforcement agency to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet. That second agency has passed a measure within their membership. So that should be coming down the pipe soon, adding to the list of unions around the country that are learning about and finding Bitcoin as a tool that preserves and protects their time, energy, and purchasing power. That's our mission here at Proof of Workforce. We got some cool things going on with other states. There's a lot of states right now considering the Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's going to be interesting to see what happened. Another great point from Texas that was made was whether the state currently holds any other commodities such as gold or oil. You saw on the Houston pension balance sheet, they do hold some gold. I think that'll be an interesting issue as other states review a strategic reserve. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to which states have the most adoption within the stakeholders within their state. At the end of the day, a state is made up of stakeholders from individual taxpayers to municipalities to pension funds and organizations like unions. If those individuals are not educated on Bitcoin, it's going to be really tough to pass a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So I think states that have the most industry, like Texas, huge mining industry, lots of individuals that hold Bitcoin. You have a city of Fort Worth, which was the first city in the country to ever mine Bitcoin as a city. These things matter, and it'll be interesting to watch what plays out with strategic reserve bills across the country. We'll be tuning in, keeping track. That's a little rundown for now. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we're putting signal over subs, but if you can sub, that's great. Chris Alemo is working on a endorsement deal from Jersey Mike's in the form of some kind of Italian cold cut sub. We're looking into it. Anyways, we'll catch you soon. Stay humble, stack sats, don't trust, verify, the usual, and have a good rest of the week.